This What's Working with Cam Marston podcast is brought to you courtesy of Michelob Ultra Beer.
They say consistency is the key to success. They weren't wrong. So how about grabbing a beer that's consistently smooth, consistently refreshing, and consistently light? You might just find that the road to success can be pretty enjoyable. Michelob Ultra, the perfect balance of taste and refreshment, and only 2.6 carbs and 95 calories. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Enjoy responsibly. Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
This is going to be a tasty show. Welcome, everyone, to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is the show designed to bring you the workplace, the workforce, and the marketplace trends shaping the workplace, the workforce, and the marketplace around us. What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate, housed in the Culver House College of Business, all housed in the University of Alabama. My goal on each of these shows is to find a guest with some remarkable insight into the business success that they've had. They may be a business expert, they may be a business owner, a business influencer, but they got a story to tell. And what I want to hear is that story. And I want them to tell it in such a way, and this is up to me to ask the questions so that the story unfolds this way. I want them to tell it in such a way that something they may say will make each of us a little bit better at whatever it is we do. Gets us an idea of something that we can do differently. It's a radio show. It's a podcast. You can find it at what'sworkingcam.com. If you're in your car or wherever you're listening to the radio, turn it up. Why not? Let somebody else hear it as well. When the state of Alabama finally allowed microbrews to enter the state, you'll recall that if you're a beer drinker, you'll recall that conversation, that legislation or whatever that happened around Montgomery. It led to that now famous and often quoted quote, I guess, "What's wrong with the beer we got? The beer we got drink pretty good, don't it?" I've played that for some friends of ours from Atlanta, and tears out of their eyes. We quote it regularly. What it did was open our borders up to a beer that had been popular across the nation, everywhere else, it seems like, but Alabama. In fact, I would go to New Orleans for something and load the back of the car up with IPAs to bring home because we couldn't get them at home. Anyway, once the borders were opened up to it, the imports came in. And by imports, I mean IPAs and microbrews from other states. And the one that really caught everybody's attention around my world anyway was Fat Tire. Everybody wanted Fat Tire. We can't get it here. It's so good. And Fat Tire sales just exploded in, I know, my part of the world here down in the deep south of the state. I suspect it was everywhere. But after the legislation was passed, the beer came in, but it allowed the breweries to begin to work in the state as well. And what happened was people said, yeah, that Fat Tire is good, but I'd prefer the beer from down the road if it tastes reasonably good. I'd prefer the beer from up the road if it tastes pretty good. And what happened is the local breweries began to produce IPAs, microbrews, things of that nature that we began to prefer versus the stuff from out of state. Now, you still see some of the stuff from out of state, but mostly, at least for me, when I get the IPAs and the microbrews, and it doesn't happen all that much, I would much prefer to find one with the name of my state on the can versus Colorado or wherever it may be. The breweries surged, the imports surged, they then waned a little bit. The number of breweries opened exploded around here, and many of them, I guess if pressed, I could name 3 that are no longer in existence. However, the ones that have stayed, the ones that have showed lasting power, have something, they've got a riddle figured out, let's say. And that's the focus of today's show. When we come back from break, I'm going to have Hatton Smith on the line with me. He's the CEO of Back 40 Beer Company. I think they're based in Gadsden, the northern part of the state. I see many references to Gadsden, some to Birmingham, but I think it's Gadsden. They've survived the storm, and Hatton has quite an experience or quite a background in the beverage world. We'll talk a little bit about that when we come back. I want to know how they survived. I met Hatton at a beer tasting here in Mobile. I can say this, perhaps one of the most charismatic guys you'll meet. You'll hear it come through on the phone. He knows what he's talking about, and he's got a story to tell on how they survived. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. It's brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate. When we come back from break, I'll have Hatton Smith with me.
This is Trey Langus with Transworld Business Advisors. I help business owners sell their businesses from mom and pop size to large mergers and acquisitions. We have a huge buyer database looking for quality businesses to buy right now. Confidentiality guaranteed. If you're a business owner considering an exit within the next few years, let's talk. Again, I'm Trey Langus. Find me at Transworld Business Advisors or Google my name.
We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. I got Hatton Smith on the line with me today. He's the CEO of Back 40 Beer Company in Gadsden, Birmingham, Northern Alabama area. We'll get the exact details momentarily. I met him at a beer tasting not long ago. A charismatic guy with a very rich background, and he's one of the beer companies that have found staying power in the state of Alabama after so many came and went in a short amount of time once the craft brewing legislation was passed. Hatton, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to What's Working.
Thank you, Cam. Glad to be with you.
So tell me, first and foremost, where exactly you're located on your website. I see Gadsden, I see Birmingham. What is your footprint? Where is your actual brewery?
So our brewery, which is we're the oldest package brewery in the state of Alabama. We're in Gadsden, Alabama, and where we brew all the beer. Our footprint is the state of Alabama, the panhandle of Florida, the state of Georgia, although we're not that well penetrated. And we recently have announced in September we're expanding into the Chattanooga market.
Very good. It's got to be, I'm suspecting Chattanooga's an up-and-coming town. I would suspect that getting a toehold in Chattanooga is going to be a challenge. So, which brings me to this. When there were so many craft breweries launching in the state of Alabama, you guys seem to jump in with the rest of them, but you've had staying power that others haven't. I bet if I could be pushed, I could think of 3 breweries locally in Mobile that have come and gone. I remember when the craft brewery world was opened up, everybody was so excited by Fat Tire coming to town, and it's hard to find a bottle of Fat Tire here anymore. What did you guys see when you began your quest of creating this brewery, and what has given you the staying power that you've had thus far?
Well, I'm a latecomer, so I don't want to misrepresent myself. I've been with the company for 4 years as the CEO and the largest investor. But the founder, it's an interesting story. The founder went to Auburn. He worked for Georgia Pacific. His name is Jason Wilson. And he went to see his brother in Colorado and drank what then was called high-gravity beer. And he really liked it, and he decided that he wanted to go in the beer business. And the thing they had to do was to pass laws to let Alabama have high-gravity beer. When those laws got passed, he started a company. It's a fascinating story because he hired his cube mate as the sales guy, and that cube mate is now the head of our operations, a guy named Trip Collins. He then hired his brother, who was in Colorado, and he became in charge of IT, marketing, sales, everything under the sun. And he was a Sigma Nu at Auburn. And when I arrived, most everybody at the brewery had graduated from Auburn. And they built a very successful brewery. They're actually exporting at one point to China and Mexico. So, but like a lot of companies in this industry, and you reference this with the 3 in Mobile, it was undercapitalized. And my skill set, I may have shared this with you at the tasting, is I can shake hands and I have some money. So I brought capital. And that capital plus, believe it or not, the federal government through its PPP programs and the EIDL loans and employee retention credit has really allowed us to somewhat change the financial structure of our company. We were perilously close to going under, and 18, 19, and now we're in healthy shape.
I think you mean 2019, not 18, 19. If you've been,
I'm old, man.
But not
I'm
that
old. Yeah.
So give me an example, Hatton, of where you applied your financial resources when you got in and you were able to analyze the opportunities here. You said undercapitalized. You at some point put your money into it and applied it somewhere in the business. Was it simply to keep the lights on? Was it to increase distribution? Where was the most effective use of your investment within the company?
Well, initially it was to change the borrowing structure. We were factoring our purchases, which is a very expensive means of getting money. It was 3% per transaction, and if you did 12 transactions, it was 36%. I sit on a local bank board, or not local, it's a Southeast bank called Service First, and I was able to borrow the money on behalf of the bank. So one, we lowered our cost of borrowing. Two, we decided that my goal was, when I got associated, is to have the best brown ale in the state of Alabama. And my son quickly told me that all our beer was being brewed in Louisiana by Beta Springs.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to brew our beer in Gadsden. So we spent about $150,000. We increased our packaging capabilities, brought all the beer back to Gadsden. So we lowered our cost significantly because we weren't having to pay anybody else. Then we really worked on the financial part of the company, and we right-sized the company to reflect the volumes. Our volume in 2018 was $1,520,000, and this year it'll be fairly close to $2.3 million. We did that. My background, Cam, is in sales. And I like to joke that I started at age 22. I was a traveling salesman, and unlike you, who's got this great podcast and all these other things you do, I'm still at the same level because I'm a traveling salesman selling beer at age 71. But it takes that. It takes getting out in the market, making sales call upon sales call upon sales call, which we did. And that's how I met your friend Chris Fuchs, the head of Bud-Busch.
Yeah.
I later realized that I could not cover, along with Brad Wilson, our sales manager, the entire footprint. We didn't have enough money to hire anybody permanently, but we hired part-time people. And the first part-time person was a gentleman named Grant Dukes, who was a bartender there at Moe's in Mobile. And he worked 2 days a week. And then we started adding people. Working our model has been 1 day a week. So we have a person today in Baldwin County 1 day a week, a person in Mobile 1 day a week, 3 in Birmingham 1 day a week, a gentleman in Huntsville 1 day a week, and a person in Atlanta who works 2 days a week. It has really allowed us to penetrate the market and grow our business.
What I'm hearing here, Hatton, is a very logical, strategic process of taking what sounds like an artisan product. So you had this dude from Auburn, Sigma Nu from Auburn, and I'm a Sigma Nu from Tulane U, so I immediately liked the guy. So Sigma Nu from Auburn, who was a craftsman, who came back from Colorado motivated and said, I'm going to brew some great beer, and he did. But he had no idea, perhaps I'm underselling his value, but he was not really skilled at building the business of selling beer. He could brew a good beer, but he couldn't build the business. And you came on with some strategy. I think you're probably underselling yourself by calling yourself simply a traveling salesman. But he was a craftsman looking for some help. Is that right?
Yeah. He was very skilled in the art of business. What he didn't have, that a lot of people don't have, and you got to figure out how to access it if you don't have it, he didn't have capital. So, but he wisely, so they went out and they said, okay, we got to go find some people with capital. And somehow my name popped up, and I had been in the coffee business. And so I knew some people in Birmingham, and it was selling coffee and selling beer are not that different. Now, I did have a strategy of, okay. And when I ran Royal Cup Coffee, we went from $100 million to $350 million. And it was really having the same type of sales intensity, creating contacts, knocking on doors, being unafraid to venture into new markets. And so we applied that same theory to the beer business. And we said, our resources, we don't have a lot of money, but they're housewives, they're bartenders, they're retired Royal Cuppers, and they're looking for something to do. And selling beer is fun. So they joined us. So that's kind of how it worked.
So I'm curious what the future looks like. And I'm not ready to wrap this up. That's typically a question towards the end. But as you stepped in, it sounds like you've right-sized the ship. But I know you didn't step in without a glance at the future to say, what could this be? What did you see down the road that said, yeah, I'm in?
Well, I was highly motivated by survival, to be absolutely honest.
that is often very motivational. Survival will keep you getting up every day.
I'd had in my mind, with a family business, my family owned a very successful career building a Royal Cup Coffee to a national brand. And when I joined this enterprise as the CEO and largest investor, I was 67, and I didn't want a big fat L on my forehead saying loser at that stage of my career. And so I have always been highly motivated. I draw no salary for us to be successful. So in the future, I would like to see us grow. I would love it if we could, if we got successful enough and we had enough cash flow and access to capital, and we could find some partners to put breweries in what I'll call tertiary markets across the state named Back 40. Because in my mind, Back 40 is the quintessential Southern name.
It is a wonderful name, and I saw the video online of where the name came from. When we come back from break, let's retell that story. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston on the phone with Hatton Smith, CEO of Back 40 Brewing Company, Gadsden, Alabama, with a great story to tell. What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate, housed in the Culverhouse College of Business at the University of Alabama. We'll be right back.
Think about how people really see you. The kid at the drive-thru just sees a coffee drinker.
Please go forward.
Your local barista sees the person who loves a smiley face in their latte.
See you next time.
It's kind of the same way with insurance. Other insurance companies just see a customer, but a State Farm agent sees more. They see you as a neighbor. Your State Farm agent is here to get to know who you really are, so they can help life go right.
Call me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, and Mobile at 666-1616.
We're back on the line with Hatton Smith, CEO, Back 40 Brewing Company, Gadsden, Alabama. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate at the Culverhouse College of Business, all housed at the University of Alabama. Hatton, there's something you said in our previous conversation that caught my attention, and that is your connection to Royal Cup. One of my first jobs out of college was working for Nestle Brands Food Service Company in the eastern portion of North Carolina. It's where I met my wife living in Raleigh. My job was to go door to door to restaurants in eastern North Carolina to try to sell them food. And one of the products that we sold was a coffee product, Sark's Coffee and Hills Brothers Coffee and all this kind of stuff. So when you said Royal Cup, I said, oh, I've sold coffee before. I know how to do that. But I didn't realize your family was connected like it is. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, my father bought the coffee company in 1950, which was the year I was born. He unfortunately passed away when I was 17, and my older brother, who had been to Harvard Business School, came back and took over the business. And we were much smaller then. And so after I graduated from college, I joined the company as well. And we were a food service coffee company that also sold to grocery stores. But it took capital to compete in the grocery stores, and we didn't have it, so we concentrated on food service, which was more service and direct sales. And so I joined the business. My older brother, Bill, I like to say he's a lot smarter than I had vision. And he founded an educational reform effort called A+. And he also founded Leadership Alabama, but that effectively took him away from the business. He handed over the reins to me. And we created a network, he really created the network of coffee companies across the country. And one by one, they started leaving, and we took their place. And so we organized a national account force, which allowed us to really penetrate the market. And we rapidly went from the 100 million to 350 million. And we became the leader in coffee sales in the lodging market. We have the Marriott business, the Ritz-Carlton business. We're the supplier of record to Hilton, Hyatt, Holiday Inn, Holiday Inn Express, et cetera. We probably have a 70% share of lodging. We became, or we already were, but became even stronger in the breakfast business. So if you go to Waffle House, you drink Royal Cup. Cracker Barrel, you drink Royal Cup. If you go to the Cheesecake Factory, you drink Royal Cup. So, and we operated with people living in 35 states and licensees and the rest. So it was a lot of fun. I was then succeeded by my nephew, which ultimately led to me getting in the beer business.
So one of the things you've said that made you successful in the beer business was the ability to talk to people, the ability and the desire to shake hands. With, in addition to the capital infusion you used, you are unafraid of meeting people. But at the CEO level, at the top level of Royal Cup, how important are those skills of being unafraid to meet people, of willingness to shake hands? It seems to me that people in that level are looking at contracts all the time. They're trying to figure out how to squeeze a penny out of this contract and that contract. Do you still feel that your gift of being unafraid to make a sale was what led to the growth of Royal Cup back in the day?
Well, Royal Cup was a team effort with a lot of great people, but in the CEO role, I felt that the most significant impact I could have on the company was growing revenue. And my skill set was the ability to go relate to people. And I was also, and I truly believe this, I think people like to trade with people they know, and they like to feel like they're important. So when I went to Marriott, I made a point to meet Mr. Marriott. When I went to Cheesecake Factory, which was in Calabasas, California, I made it a point to meet David Overton, et cetera, Joe Rogers at Waffle House, which was already an existing customer. And then Sandy Cochran's a friend of mine. She's the CEO of Cracker Barrel. So that sort of strategy, you play to your strengths. If I was a great manufacturer, I would have spent time there. But I was a salesman. And that's where I spent the time, and building the company really was an exciting event. And I'm very proud of what Royal Cup became.
Well, I remember I sat down with a guy named Frank Rao. I think it was his first name, Frank, at MS Rao. It's a wonderful antique store on Royal Street in New Orleans, and they have priceless stuff in there. We interviewed for him for the show. So I'm sitting amongst all this artwork that is priced in the $5-10 million range. And he's selling this stuff to collectors, to people who truly appreciate this. But the point is, he referred to himself as a simple merchant. I'm like, man, you can't be a simple merchant. You're about to sell a $10 million Picasso. You don't call yourself a simple merchant. He said, Cam, basically, I'm a simple merchant. You are selling big multi-million-dollar contracts, I suspect, to somebody like Marriott, the Marriott chain and all the brands that are under them. Yet you continue to refer to yourself as a salesman. I find that interesting. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I definitely think I'm a salesman. So, for instance, for your listeners in today's, so I made cold calls in your hometown of Mobile. We went to Winsel's, we went to Moe's, to Bluegill, et cetera, all in the rain. Mobile, I know, has its great share of rain. And then we were over in Baldwin County, and we went to the Gulf Coast Lodge, the Oyster Bar, et cetera. And then, then I'll be in Bentonville, Arkansas on Tuesday. So again, same strategy. My strength is sales. I know, and I have some sense of math, that if we raise our revenues faster than we grow our expenses, we're going to improve our profitability. And so I've always thought that revenue is the long-term answer. How do you get revenue? And that was my strength.
I'm curious if your current partners at Back 40 looked at you and said, we need that strength. We need his ability to sell. Or they said, I don't care if he's a 3-armed orangutan. We need his capital. Did they want both parts of you?
I think initially they liked the 3-armed orangutan.
Yeah.
If you're drowning, money is the key.
Yeah. And how as the CEO now, do you have any input into, I imagine with Royal Cup, you had some sort of input into coffee flavoring, or we need a bolder or a less bold coffee or something like that. With the rich background your family has in the business, you must have had some opinions on what coffee would sell best where, and what the guest in Topeka, Kansas staying at the Marriott would want. Coffee, do you have input into the brews that are created today, the profiles of the craft beers?
I do, but I don't want to mislead the audience. I had a lot of input into blend creation at Royal Cup because I grew up in that business. Yeah. And I spent a lot of time cupping coffees. In the beer business, I'm a neophyte, 4 years. The brewmasters, we have 2 brothers. They're 11 years. The head of operations, 11 years. The sales manager, he's 11 years. They know much more about beer than I. I participate, but I wouldn't say I am the lead influencer, and that seems to have worked well for us. I'm a participant, but I'm not I have the final say, but I'm really not the lead influencer.
I think there are listeners out there who are likely in their back chapter, let's say, a back chapter of their career, who have heard what you've done, gotten out of the family business, the business that has, propelled you to success, and jumped into something that has excited you, something new that's excited you.
Yeah.
And they're saying, I'd love to know how he thought this out. I'd love to know how they found you. The Back 40 found you. But I think there's another story here of a guy in his 70s who's found a passion and a purpose on the other side of his traditional career. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I think, when you run a business, you have a responsibility to the people that are there. So when I was running Royal Cup, every Sunday when I went to church, I'd always pray that I would make wise decisions for the betterment of the people who are associated with Royal Cup. What motivates me is, we have 20, 25 employees up there in Gadsden, and we want them to keep their jobs, and we want this brewery to stay in Gadsden. We don't want to sell it to some gigantic enterprise and just to be wiped off the face of the earth. So you get motivated by, really making an impact with people and improving lives.
That is a second chapter of life motivation that I hear so much out of people who have left their first career and into their second. Why are you doing it? To make people better, not to earn money, though they're not going to do it for free, but to make people better. When we come back from break, I want to talk to you a little bit more about what your peers are talking to you about in envy, as I bet what it is, of you finding a purpose in this part of your life. And then, Hatton, I want you to tell me about the profile. I want to hear the words you choose of your favorite Back 40 beer. I think this is going to be fun. You with me?
Okay. I'm ready.
All right. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. Hatton Smith is on the phone with me, CEO, Back 40 Brewing Company, Gadsden, Alabama. We'll be back after this break. What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate, housed in the Culver House College of Business, all housed at the University of Alabama.
This is Trey Langus with Transworld Business Advisors. You've worked for years to grow and build your business, and now you're considering an exit strategy. Selling your business can be intimidating and complex. Let our local team at Transworld Business Advisors help you. We are the largest business brokerage in the world, and I will personally and confidentially guide you through this process. I'm Trey Langus. Find me at Transworld Business Advisors or Google my name.
Customer service never goes out of style. In fact, I think it's safe to say that customer service is more valuable and more important now more than ever. Hi, this is Cam Marston. One thing that my over 200 episodes of What's Working has taught me is how important customer service is to building and maintaining a thriving business. It's the growing need for customer service that's led me to partner with one of the state's leading customer service trainers to create our program called Delivering 5-Star Customer Service. Your team will get one 90-minute training session per month for 6 consecutive months. Each session builds on the skills learned the previous month, allowing your customer-facing teams to practice before moving on to the next lesson. And the 6 lessons address everything from appearance to electronic communications to conflict resolution to maintaining a service mindset. Our program travels and is delivered in person at your workplace, nothing virtual. You simply can't practice the level of the skills this course teaches virtually. For more information, email me, cam@cammarston.com, and let's schedule a time to talk. Remember, you have less to fear from outside competition than you do from discourtesy and bad service from inside your own company. Again, email me, cam@cammarston.com, and let's talk about your business. Hatton Smith is on the line with me. He's the CEO of Back 40 Beer Company based in Gadsden, Alabama. A background in the coffee business. You've likely heard of Royal Cup Coffee. That's his family's business. Once he got out, he was attracted to the Back 40 Beer Company because he had access to capital, and that's exactly what they needed. But since then, he's become a disciple of the beer. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston, brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate at the Culverhouse College of Business at the University of Alabama. Hatton, there is a passion for retirees out there. Let me tell you a quick story, and then I'm going to get you to react to this thing. So a buddy of mine buys and sells businesses, and he's really good. His name is Trey Langus. He's a supporter of the show. And one of the things that he told me is that if he asks somebody who's about to sell their business, what are they going to do after they sell the business? And if they react by saying, I don't know, he won't take them on as a client because that business defines them. They don't have a passion or a hobby that's going to consume them after selling the business. And they are, per Trey, once they get down the road of positioning this business to sell, this business owner is going to decide to not sell when he or she realizes that after the sale, they have no purpose. They have no motivation in life to get up and take care of the company. I suspect that you have peers and colleagues in around your part of the state, as well as all across the country. You're a well-networked guy who are somewhat envious of the way you found purpose after getting out of Royal Cup. Can you talk to me about that?
Well, I didn't want to sit around, that's for sure. The first job I had I was still sort of involved with Royal Cup, is I became head of the UAB Athletic Foundation, and it was at a time when football had been shut down, and that took a lot of time, but it was again a worthy endeavor. And then this business, the beer business, was exciting because you had a chance, as we talked about earlier, to impact lives, but also succeed and make your mark. So I think when you're 70 or you're 20, I think it's the same. I think number one, you believe in the mission of the enterprise. It's like with these podcasts. What you're doing is helping people see various strategies that other business guys have employed. And so there's somebody listening to the podcast that said, that's my takeaway from today's podcast. But you believe in the mission first, you set goals. I think goals are critical. And then you lead from the front. You don't ask anybody to do anything that you're not going to do, and you really should do more than they do. And then the other thing, we deploy this both at Back 40, but we also did it at Royal Cup, is celebrate. So tonight is an example. We have spent $180,000, which for us is like $1.8 million for a lot of companies, on our tap room. And we have decided that we're going to have neon lights that say Back 40 beer on the front of our building because our sign was just dilapidated. And so we got these neon lights, and what we're going to do tonight in Gadsden, now this will be probably broadcast after tonight, but we're going to have a lighting ceremony. We'll get all our customers in the tap room, and we're going to come out when it turns dark, and poof, the lights are going to go on and celebrate success, because you're going to lose a lot. So celebrate success. And I've always believed in that. And I think that's important at 70, and I think that's important at 20 or 30 or 45 or whatever age you might be.
You know, it's funny that you say that. My wife and I have a little wine cooler here at our house, and there's 2 racks of wine that every now and then I'm feeling flush. I'll buy a nicer bottle of wine than I normally would buy. And let's say it's in the $40 or $50 range. I don't spend a lot of money on wine. And we put it on one of those 2 racks, and we say, when something big happens, we're going to celebrate and pull one of the bottles of wine off this rack. We've never pulled a bottle of wine off that rack. We've never. And we say there are great things happening here. Our children have done this. She and I have done that. But we think, I'm not so sure that's worthy of one of those bottles of wine. Somebody finally took me by the shoulders, kind of, not literally, but said, hey, find a reason to celebrate. Drink those bottles of wine. Find reasons to celebrate. And I think they've got a point, and I think you've got a point there. Is that something that you added to the company, or is that something that Back 40 was already doing?
I think I did add that. I mean, I did not have the beer knowledge that, or the creativity that our founder and all of his associates had. I had money, and I had enthusiasm, and I had drive. And so enthusiasm and celebration, it's kind of like that tasting we had. That was a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh.
You meet a lot of people, you just kind of celebrating life. And so I go up, and I was looking at our new tap room and the new turf we put down, and all the families with small children were there this past Friday night. And I said, I'm falling in love with this beer company. It's just so much fun. And I do think, in your example of it, and you're a great entrepreneur of this podcast, it's got to be a lot of fun for you talking to all these various people, and they all got different ways of doing things, and they're all different personalities. Same thing with the beer business.
Yeah, I tell you, if I were to call a stranger and say, my name is Cam Marston, you've never met me, and I'd like to ask you questions for an hour, they'd say, I'm afraid not. If I call that same stranger and say, I'm Cam Marston, I'd like to interview you for my radio show and broadcast, which is broadcast across the state of Alabama, they say, let me get my calendar. And suddenly they're telling me stuff that, normally they wouldn't tell me. And it's not like I'm trying to get deep, dark secrets, but it's fun to make these connections. You're absolutely right. So the question that I queued up prior to the break was, you have a palate, you developed a palate in your coffee business of understanding the flavors that are contained within a cup of coffee. I suspect that palate has served you well as you've transferred into the craft brew business. Pick one of your favorite Back 40 beers and tell me what it tastes like. I love listening to wine people talk about the flavor profiles of their wine and their gestures and their expressions. I'm going to have to imagine your gestures and expressions over the radio. Talk to me about what your favorite Back 40 beer tastes like.
Well, they're all great, but Naked Pig and Truck Stop Honey were here well before me. So I won't go to those. Those are well known. I at least helped a little bit in creating something called Bamimosa, which is a great beer. It's a brut ale. It is champagne yeast infused, and then it's mixed with Valencia orange juice. Ooh. And it is a humdinger. That Mosa line then created the seasonal. I'll try to see if I can find some for you, which is now we have sold all of our allotment. We create these seasonal beers, and it's lemon blueberry mosa. The lemon blueberry mosa has Meyer lemon, a super high-end lemon, mixed with real blueberry compote, and it comes out almost bluish purple in your glass, and it is a super refresher. And so I drink that during the summer. And then we created a brand new IPA about a year and a half old called Devil's Staircase. Devil's Staircase has a significant citra hops, which is juicy in mouthfeel. And it does not have the bite of a typical IPA. And as we like to say at our company, it has been a humdinger. So those three, because at least I played a role in those, would be my three go-tos.
So this podcast, this radio show will be available, will broadcast in early September-ish. Tell me the environment where these beer would taste best. Are they best on the beach? Are they best as your favorite college football team is queuing up to play a game? So you can taste, you have the profile of the beer. What event do they pair with best?
Well, Bama Mosa and the lemon blueberry will, because it's seasonal, will no longer be available. Bama Mosa best pairs with the beach or the lake, etc. A Devil's Staircase, you can drink every day, along with Truck Stop or Naked Pig. We then have a new one coming out, which we just had a tasting with the boys from Bud-Busch at Bluegill, and we did it this morning at Adams Beverage here in Birmingham, which is the local distributor, and it's going to be a West Coast IPA called Pipe Dream. So our strategy, as mentioned, is to cover the waterfront. So if you're at a football game, the Bama Mosa is a great one. The Devil's Staircase is great. Or what is our leading seller is Truck Stop Honey, which is a English brown ale. It's light. It's a surprising brown ale. It's a leading brown ale in the state, mixed with real Alabama honey.
No kidding.
It does great.
No, I know there are companies out there that make flavors that, let's say you mentioned a Meyer lemon, a high-end lemon. They can manufacture a flavor of a Meyer lemon. You're not using flavors. You're using the actual lemons. Is that correct?
Well, in the form of lemonade. We mix the lemonade. We mix lemonade and blueberry compote to create the lemon blueberry mosa. All those things have to be added to the ale.
So, we're running out of time here. Where can people find more about Back 40 Beer Company? Where can they find a can of this beer?
Well, if you're in Mobile, it would be Publix, Rouse's, Greer's. If you're in the rest of the state, it would be Publix, Winn-Dixie, Target, Walmart. If you're in Birmingham, which is a major market, it's Piggly Wiggly, Publix, Target, Winn-Dixie, Walmart, and the same would be the case in Huntsville, including Kroger. If you go to Georgia, we're very excited because we have two of our SKUs, the Rolling in the Haze, which is a New England hazy, along with the Truck Stop, and that's in 120 Krogers in the state of Georgia.
Your distribution sounds like it's going quite well for you.
It's on the way, and we're going to 16 or 13 food cities in the month of September in Chattanooga.
Hatton Smith is the CEO of Back 40 Beer Company, based in Gadsden, Alabama, distribution across the state with a great story to tell. Hatton, thank you so much for your time today.
Cam, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
We will be back after this break with final comments in segment 5. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston, brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate at the Culverhouse College of Business, all housed in the University of Alabama.
This is Bill Wasden, labor and employment attorney at Burr and Forman. With offices across Alabama, our attorneys are keenly aware of employment situations in a state with under 3% unemployment. Employers have faced many obstacles over the last 2 years, and new processes and policies must be in place to ensure you're setting clear expectations for your employees. We've created a list of the top 5 legal and operating issues facing employers in 2022 that will, ultimately, ensure your company is prepared for a data breach, the Great Resignation, new presidential executive orders, or potential overtime rule changes. Reach out to me at bwasden@burr.com, that's BURR.com, or my partner Katie Willis, kwillis@burr.com for this information. Burr attorneys are here to help you with your labor and employment law needs.
No representation is made that the quality of the legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by other lawyers.
Life insurance is one of those subjects that make people want to change the subject rather than admit they probably don't have enough. I'm State Farm agent Allison Horner, and that's why I focus on how the benefits of life insurance actually live on by asking people to think in terms of life without having to sell the house insurance, or life without having to give up college insurance. Find out how the benefits of life insurance can live on for your family. Call me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, and get to a better state with State Farm.
Maybe I'm attuned to these messages. Maybe I'm listening for them perhaps more than I should. But what I continue to hear is people, as they enter this post-retirement-ish age, continue to look for meaning, for purpose. And Hatton Smith seems to have found it. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate at the Culverhouse College of Business at the University of Alabama. It seems that there's a drive. There's a meaning, purpose, benevolence, or something that once people have climbed the mountain, conquered the dragon, whatever you say, and they've moved into this next chapter, they look for a way to give back, a way to do something additional before stopping working. And I hear it as I talk with my friends. Most of us aren't in this chapter yet, but that those that are my older friends are, that this motivation seems to be big. And it's a piece of research I did a while back, and it points a lot to teaching, meaning that a lot of retirees find purpose in teaching once they've done what their climb the mountain, slay the dragon chapter of their life. And though Hatton didn't use those words, that's what I heard. He's kind of teaching. He's kind of leading these very, very good craftsmen of beer into a different phase of their own careers by teaching them what he knows as he goes along. I also remember back in the day as the .com businesses began to grow real quick, many of these geniuses in the technology would realize at some point in their business that there's something they don't know. They didn't realize that there's something that they didn't know. They're excellent craftsmen. And I remember reading a book by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth. And he talked a little bit about this in the book, that there are a lot of people out there that are capable of doing their craft very well. And their attitude is, because I can do my craft real well, I should be in my own business. But what that book points out are there are many aspects of business that the craftsman is unaware of. And that's exactly what happened. So back to the technology days, these young geniuses in the technology would go find some seasoned people. At the time, they were mostly baby boomers. Go find the seasoned baby boomers and say, hey, we've built this beautiful thing, but there's something we're missing here. And we don't know exactly what we're missing. Can you come take a look around and see if you can't help us? In other words, these brilliant young technologists, for lack of a better term, would go hire the people that have seen a broader horizon and said, okay, here's what we need to do here, whether it's the hand-to-hand sales, which Hatton is so very good at, whether it was managing finance, which, again, he brought to Back 40 Brewing Company, not managing finance, but infused some money. But these young people would go find people with this wisdom and the ability to build a larger vision that was not entirely product related. Anyway, it was great to get him on the show. I enjoyed that immensely. He offers an extraordinary amount of expertise. And hey, if you enjoyed it and you happen to see that Back 40 label on a can of beer somewhere out there, pick one up because you now know a little bit about the story. There's no doubt that whatever the product is, you're able to enjoy it a little bit more when you know the story behind it. That certainly is the case with me. And I will enjoy my next Back 40 wherever I find it, knowing a little bit of their story as well. That'll wrap us up for this week, everybody. I hope you have a good week. You can find more about us on whatsworkingcam.com. You can email me directly at that site, and I can, looking for your ideas. I get some good ones, but please, some of the ideas that come in through email are so overwhelmingly self-promotional that I just simply have to say no. It's just, I want to hear a good story about a business that has grown and that can teach the listener something, not overwhelmingly self-promotional. Ask you to consider that. John Thompson is the producer. He's with Ion Digital. Thank you very much. We'll have another show next week. What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate.